Evening, everybody. I thought I had a little more time when getting started, but clearly I didn't. So we will make the most of the time we have today. Let me just make sure I'm properly set up. I thought I had a stream on in the background, but it doesn't actually look like I do. Okay, we're good. When talking with the old world folks, there does seem to be a bit of a problem with my PC, but I'm not 100% sure how to diagnose it because I know that processor um, problems are a lot more rare than people make them out to be. But it does feel like there is an individual core that essentially causes things to crash whenever it's used. Now, that's pretty much limited to Old World and then specific. Hey, Kieran, thank you very much for 9 months of subscribing. You're in right at the start. I hope you were not perched over your computer just waiting to hit that button, but I appreciate it. But yeah, so I think for the purposes of streaming, it should be fine. But, you know, obviously I've paid for a bunch of hardware, so I'd like that to be working properly. Now, the good news is I don't think that's going to cause any troubles for Phantom Liberty, but what I'm trying to find out is, you know, is it a motherboard thing? Is it actually a processor thing? And if anybody knows, I mean, this is the challenge. I'm kind of capable of Googling like everyone else, but there are definitely some cases in terms of hardware that I'm not so sure about. So for instance, I wasn't aware that you could in fact set I think it's the affinity. Anyways, you can actually set the specific cores that are being used in programs on Windows. And what's funny is I actually really thought I was sort of making my processor sweat a bit with a couple of the programs that I wrote, but clearly I wasn't, because it's only games in which I've run into this problem. Anyways, if anybody happens to know, I'd love sort of an opportunity to do some diagnostics before the warranties run out on these things, assuming that they haven't already. But I also figured that that's probably a conversation. Oh, sorry, just give me 1 second here. Cool. You need to turn off the motherboard's boot option. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I figure maybe something like bleeping computer or that might help too. But anyways, it won't get in the way of doing the stream tonight. So let's see. I don't know if I was going to go straight to Santo Domingo. Let's see. So we've got Bird with Broken Wings. So between 11 and 1. So we need to wait for the evening. Yeah, I'm fine waiting on that. And Olaf, thank you very much. A rare Friday Olaf has arrived. I think you and Cured are in the same... I think you and Olaf are actually in this... sorry, Olaf, I think you and Cured are in the same time zone. Okay, actually, I think I remember what I was doing. I believe I was originally looking for the tarot cards. And I was going to pick up some vehicles while I was going to pick up the whatever vehicle jobs I could while... we'll do my rounds. Well, it was worth a try. Anyways, I hope you both are doing. Hope you both are doing well. I am. I'm kind of interested in seeing how much more of the DLC we have. Obviously, if I can get Cyberpunk done, that does open up some opportunities for other things. I kind of want to pick up the car, but it's on another level. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a side of me. It was definitely feeling like it was just very, very quiet for a few streams, which I was getting people maybe weren't caring that much for. I am clearly going the wrong way here. Thank you very much, Olaf. So I must confess, I'm not 100% sure who MoreQ2 is. I'm very happy to see it is D-Pain getting a sub there, because D-Pain is actually one of the people who invited me to his Pointless Discord podcast. And of course, my apologies to MoreQ2. He may just be one of the quiet ones. I actually didn't realize. Let me see if I can adjust my my setting. I should just be able to. Like, I didn't set any privacy settings, so I guess they've changed the defaults. Anyways, I will. I'll try and correct that for you, Kira. Thanks for letting me know. But yeah. Anyways. My hope here is kind of just, if I can, I'd like to get through, like, where I can, I'd sort of like to finish games. On the other hand, like, while I try not to obsess too much about numbers, I do have some pause when, you know, the number of viewers hit 0, because that is fairly rare for this channel. But for a while, that was actually becoming something that did occasionally happen. And that's usually a signal that things really aren't working. Also, I have no idea why things are sort of chugging now. I don't think that fixed anything, to be honest, but let's do... Oh, alright, well... Target hit!
Enter close quarters!
Oh.
Wow, I didn't do any damage to her.
No mercy!
You know what? We're just gonna Indiana Jones this.
This is very bad!
That wasn't actually the button I meant to hit, but... Oh, interesting. I'm happy to hear things are picking up for you. I try not to be too celebratory when, you know, when bad things happen to people, although there are definitely some people who have it coming. But I'm glad it seems to be picking up for you. So I'm just putting up my my metrics. Kadeem Brown, hey Joe, you good? Ain't seen you in a month. Yeah, so I moved to North Oak. You didn't say nothing? How are you gonna do your tomb like that? Nah man, it was a last minute thing. No goodbye parties or nothing. Alright, alright. So how's it hanging in North Oak? Fucking preem, choom. Peeps be showing all, throwing all sorts of shit. I'm talking fancy ass clothes with tags still on. Unopened food, even get an implant here and there. Damn, sounds like paradise. Hey, maybe I can move over there too. We could team up again. What? Why? You put one foot down here and you'll be getting lead to the back of your head. A couple gonks already tried it. Wasn't happy ending for them. This is my turf now. Remember that. Okay. User Kadeem Brown has blocked you. I was gonna try resetting things, but nope. Well, let's try Jalapeno Joe's hideout, and then maybe... You're kidding me. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna grab some goodies, and then I'll reset the game. And thank you very much. I'm assuming those gifted subs were for the hype train, Olaf. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's see if I can... I don't want to spend too much time on this. Okay, so I'm sorry to start off with a reset here, but I'm just going to try loading the game up again. It's going to take a minute just to get the it's going to take a minute to get the cloud upload. 1 a.m. hype train. I do appreciate it. I know, like, Olaf, you've been not just like a supporter in terms of the financials, although certainly you've been very generous both in your support of the channel and, of course, my viewing as well, because it feels like you've gifted, like, between you and Ellen Ripley, I kind of feel like you account for almost all of my subscriptions. Not exactly, but you're close. But obviously on top of that, it's... you know, it's very nice to see some people get an opportunity to, you know, to use the emotes and stuff like that. And, you know, obviously for some, you know, they get the sub and then they kind of like never appear again. You know, you can't really control that. But I do like the fact that, you know, you've been, well, I mean, okay, so obviously directly, I like the fact that you've been generous because I personally benefit from it. But I do like the fact that some people who, you know, who have been watching this stream for a long time have benefited from it, because, you know, you just like to see people who maybe want to do that sort of support, and for one reason or another, even through preference, just can't. So thank you. That's a long way of saying thank you. Yeah, I'll confess, I've been less and less happy with the way Twitch has been doing ads. Like, I get it. I get they need to make money and all of that, but it's really aggressive, and it's I would like, honestly, I want to have the choice, right? Even YouTube's kind of got to this level, because I know Mad Ad kind of comes in, and like back when I first started on YouTube, there were a couple of people who actually were really like they kind of celebrated the fact that I hit the 1,000 follows, which I think is the number you need for to get ads. And I'm like, you know, it's a little funny to see someone celebrating the fact that I can sort of ruin their experience by adding ads now. But sort of the thing that I figured was, oh, well, screw you. You're in big trouble once I reload. Wish I had a more direct way of aiming at this car, but... So I'm not 100% sure what that was about, but that was a lot of fun. But yeah, anyway, so like one of the things that I originally did was I sort of said, okay, well let's try, you know, let's try doing some ads, but I'll make sure that it's sort of like an ad at the start. And then I think I made it so that like the very last episode, I don't exactly want to step on the fire here, but I also want loot. All right, well, that's what I get for trying. Yeah, so I sort of figured it's like, okay, well, I don't want the people who are sort of like binge watching to wind up, you know, wind up getting hit with too many ads. But I figure, you know, put an ad at the very last episode is kind of a way we can maybe hit the middle road of that. And you know, YouTube's changed that. So now your option is to put mid-roll ads. Now, as far as I'm concerned, like, unless I am forced, I will never do mid-roll ads. I despise them. It is actually why I'm mad at Twitch's way of doing things, because I don't have any control over whether or not people... I don't get control over when things are interrupted, even if people are sort of coming in at the start. I would just like it if it's like, okay, I'm going on a break. Now's the time to, you know, roll some ads or something like that. But, oops, keep doing this wrong. Moon. There we go. The moon. The moon reminds us that reality is not always what it seems at first glance. In a world of appearances and illusions, the best course is often charted by one's own intuition. The moon is also the card of dreams, desires, and of course sleep, death's nightly ritual. The other reality that I kind of need to deal with that too is, you know, people are sometimes quite polite, right? And they don't want to see ads, but they also don't want to sort of say, hey, I want to see your stuff for free. But like, I don't know, I don't like saying one thing and then doing something else. You know, people obviously care about it, even if they're nice about it. So, I don't know. Like I said, it's one of these things where you're kind of at the mercy of a platform in terms of how you inconvenience people. And in general, I've tended to find that it's usually the broadcast that suffers for it, right? Like, if I'm, you know, from revealed preferences, I'm not anybody's favorite. But I sure would like it that even if I'm going to have sort of a fly-by-night stream, it'd be nice if I could at least sort of choose, you know, where the pain points are, rather than just sort of follow the same model. I guess, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. Obviously following a model that is set for every other broadcast, and if every other broadcast is larger than me, then probably the one-size-fits-all approach is going to be... I think I got hit by this the last time I went here, too. Yeah, obviously, like, so I tend to think that niche channels are the ones that tend to suffer for the more general rules. And, like, obviously, you know, as a platform, Twitch is one of these things that should actually be able to accommodate a few different approaches. It's, you know, it's kind of governments or... like large, like, so like a Starbucks store, right? Starbucks store is going to have a policy on animals, or it's going to have a policy on, you know, what kind of clothes you can wear or something like that. And that's going to be uniformly applied because it's a physical space with a number of people. Whereas digitally, the whole point of this, right? The whole customization that so many of these different, it sounds really exciting up there. You know, the whole point of a lot of these digital platforms is that you get that level of customization and specialization. and it's why they're able to, make so much more money with advertising. So it's kind of weird that they take that away from you when you have a channel that might be built on a slightly different premise. Anyways, I'm ranting. 102, Mr. 102 leaves home 7:15 to 7:20, enters parked Delamain. Miss 102 jogging with bodyguard around 8 a.m., sex with bodyguard around 8:45 to 9 a.m., leaves house around 10 a.m. and back no earlier than 5 to 8 p.m. Trash, unfinished takeout, sushi, electronics, clothes. 103, Miss 103 works nights, leaves house around 10:30 to 11 p.m., back no earlier than 6 a.m. Who did that? Raybeam, thank you very much. 10 months. That is one that definitely feels a lot sooner. Thank you very much for contributing to a very big sub day, it feels like. I appreciate that immensely. But yeah, I would not have guessed 10 months if you had quizzed me beforehand. I hope you are well. Miss 103 works nights, leaves house around 10:30 to 11 p.m., back no earlier than 6 a.m., trash expired medications, food waste, cigarette butts, electric fence. 104, Mr. 104, home all day, doesn't leave, nothing of note in trash, better avoid. Patrols, security, high, something's... Joe, you're not safe. Bobby to Jalapeno Joe. Joe, you ever wonder why you're the only one of us in North Oak? You think you can, you're so smart, nobody ever thought of eating caviar out of rich organic trash? Well, you're not there where, well, you're not. There were others, but they disappeared. Joe, nobody knows where. Run while you still can. Yo, Jalapeno Joe, what's up, my choom? Long time no see, man. How you been? Me? Well, I've been better. Things are a little rough right now. Got that DT, getting worse. Shakes are so bad, it's like I'm a bust through the wall. Anyway, you need a safe spot to get clean. Help a choom out. Anyway, need a safe spot to get clean. Help a choom out, like I helped you back then. Choom, you got it twisted. Just because you loaned me a few eds, which I paid back, doesn't mean we're chooms till the end of the world. So take that sob story of yours back where it came from. Shouldn't have started up again. Anyway, let me spell it out for you. No, you can't come up here. 2, no, I won't help you. 3, it's jalapeno, not jalapeno, for fuck's sake. It's not that hard. Well, I've been very busy with work. I don't necessarily think, overwork is a virtue, but like I have been enjoying the work, and the last couple, like, so yesterday, for instance, I was sort of at work for an additional 90 minutes. What happened? Where's my car, actually? Yeah, it's not there. But yeah, I was basically at work for 90 minutes longer than the time that I normally end. But a large part of that was just I kind of felt like I was on a roll, and I was very much enjoying what I was doing. So I do need to be careful about that. In fact, my boss basically told me to get the hell out of the office early today. And it is also equally nice to be in a job where people care enough about your long-term well-being that they will say, no, you're getting out of here on time, or actually ahead of time in this case. Because I definitely couldn't count on that always. And in fact, I would argue that, I was definitely pushing myself a lot harder with less enjoyment for things that ultimately mattered less in the old place. So again, I have nothing but good things to say about the new place. I mean, I'm sure there could be any number of complaints that I can pull out about things, but that's not the point. You don't go out of your way to find bad things, right? So I know there's a little bit of a worry where if everything becomes about work, then you sort of wonder about how you're spending your time. But I'd say I'm in a pretty decent spot. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Ravi. Are you active? So I know for my own case, that was sort of a fairly long journey to wind up where I am now. Are you actively looking, or are you just sort of gritting your teeth and working through where you are right now? Because I know for me, it actually took me quite a while to finally just say, okay, that's it. I'm out of this place. Cool. Well, there is something to be said for, an active search while you currently have a job, just because, that gives you options. And I think having options, like even just simply having something stable, I think always slows down a search a little bit more, but like not necessarily in a bad way. Although I do also think that I tend to like comfort a little bit more. So like I'll probably take less than ideal circumstances just to avoid having to do a search. So I also I kind of need to counterbalance that. Not everybody's like that though. I've noticed that the tendency now, at least among the people I know, is to move quite rapidly between roles, and certainly economically it's worked very well for them. They basically see a pay bump each time they move, and that hasn't always been my style. But I mean, it's kind of like some of the streaming stuff that I talk about. Like, I'm also not, like, I would never be a good entrepreneur because I've never been very good at selling myself. And in fact, somebody who is quite good at selling their stuff very kindly offered some suggestions just in terms of, even for my articles, like how to make that, how to make them better, or like how to reach people a little bit better. And again, it's something, selling myself in a workplace or, on my own stuff has always been a challenge. Even when it's something that I'm, a specialist on. So all of that is a long way of saying I hope the search, I don't want to say I hope the search is fast, because sometimes taking the time does give you like the right job, but I hope it's resolved one way or another soon. The Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune means that change is coming. One's destiny could turn out for the better or the worse, yet it also bears the promise of new possibilities. The wheel reminds us that nobody remains at the top forever, but also that not every situation is hopeless. So one of the reasons we were going for these was it felt like I wasn't able to talk to Misty about the cards that I had found. So I'm just kind of doing the rounds. If I get a chance to steal a car, I'll sort of take it. But right now I'm just sort of filling the time. Speaking of, see ya, losers. It doesn't feel that fast, but we're also not. Oop. Well, at least has guns. I do like it when the physics bugs out a little bit like that. Alt cycle. Okay, this is going to be a problem. I guess the nice thing is that I don't have like a time limit, so I can sort of afford to be a bit of a maniac. Although it looks like somebody's still... I realize that might have been a little overkill, but... Also, I'm sorry, one of my contacts has been kind of bugging me since the start of this little encounter. So I've been trying to tend to it while also focusing on the stream. Now in Canada it's a long weekend, but I guess for you good folks out in the real world, it isn't. It's Victoria Day for us, so I have no idea if the Sceptered Isle marks the occasion.
Oh yeah, I knew I picked the right merc for the gig. My man will take care of the rest.
I don't have a lot of hopes that we're going to be able to pick up a car off of this, but let's... Alright, what are we looking at here? I've got 58... Well, looks like I can. Yes, I think 54 was the worst. Okay. So again, I'm not going to go out of my way to, you know, to like seek out car theft jobs, but what I will do, basically until I get a chance to meet up with Songbird, I'm going to pick up the tarot cards. In between, I'll take the opportunity to steal, or basically just do whatever side job. So like if there's an opportunity to, you know, do an NCPD item, I'll do that as well. I particularly like the car jobs just because they also give me a discount on buying the cars. So it makes me money, but it also saves me money in the form of the discount. But once all that's done, I'm sort of going to be directing my financial efforts towards apartments. And once that's done, I can maybe think about upgrading my cyberware. Obviously, I upgrade my cyberware on other occasions too, but most of this stuff is just so I can avoid, like, where I can. This is also true for something like Elder Scrolls or that. Where I can, I try not to spend all the time sort of fast traveling or otherwise avoiding experiencing the world. I just feel there's slightly more interesting ways to engage with it, and if there is, like, if I haven't done everything in Night City, why on earth would I, why on earth would I push the timer ahead? I may also need to take a quick minute just to properly take my contacts out, just because it's like, it's not super bad, but it is getting a little distracting. So. I wish I had something more meaningful to say about the game's story, but right now I'm just focusing on my minor discomfort. Hello. Get out! I don't know where the other one is. Yeah. Wherever they are, they hit like a truck, so I'm vamoosing. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so this is the sort of thing I would stop for if I wasn't already in the middle of a mission. So this is going to be unrelated to Cyberpunk, at least in a direct way. But I've noticed quite a bit of press coverage for Megalopolis. Are there any Francis Ford Coppola fans or otherwise people who are otherwise following the press for that show?
Shit, that's someone on your ass.
Okay, that's going to be a problem because usually it's somebody following me that kills the timer. I kind of feel... Oh no! That was a Grand Theft Auto kind of screw up. 45 seconds, I should be able to do it as long as I don't get caught by it. Or as long as the police don't see me. Okay.
got a gift.
Okay, let's get paid.
Thanks for the help, V.
I'm gonna
My chum will do the finishing touches.
take a quick break to get my contacts taken care of, and then we'll be back. So, sorry, I will just take a very, very small break. Okay, I think I even forgot to mute the mic, but I know we should be, yeah, we should be clear now. And for some reason, the game isn't coming up. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, but I'm in considerably less discomfort now. But yeah, Megalopolis is interesting in a couple ways. I don't know, it's possible even as long as I've been alive. But it's definitely a project I've heard about Francis Ford Coppola trying to do a few times. And it does sometimes make me a little worried about like when there's okay, so actually here's a good example. Like when you hear George Lucas talk about Star Wars, oh, sorry, I just saw a news item I'm a little curious about. Interesting. There's a bit of gaming news that the Wall Street Journal did. Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg are actually, so they're business publications, but they actually have decent news coverage, much better than the dedicated gaming press I've tended to find. Okay, anyways. So one of the things that you'll notice about George Lucas, if you look at how he has talked about Star Wars over the life of that that movie and that series, the Empire has stood for a number of things, right? So there's an analogy that's drawn to Nazi Germany, and then he says that it's actually Richard Nixon that he's talking about, and so on and so forth. And this, sorry, I just covered chat. Excuse me. This is inevitably going to happen. I mean, people need to sell their movies, right? And this is actually one thing that kind of bugged me a little bit about the coverage of the Oppenheimer movie, because everybody's sort of making these comparisons to the Manhattan Project and AI. Excuse me. And it's just very difficult for me to see this as being anything other than a big news item. Like, it's maybe not necessarily that was really informing the filmmaking, and it's a little bit more about something that's in the news that is good for selling the show. And again, right, like, sometimes you just need to sell the show, but I also know, like, when I'm still really into Stanley Kubrick, but there was a time when I could claim to have read every book about him. At least every English book. I'm sure there's probably some in other languages that weren't translated. You know, I did sort of rely on collections of his interviews to get a better understanding of some of his films, and so I imagine that at some point somebody's going to be taking a look at the Oppenheimer sort of press junkets and say, yes, you can clearly see Nolan's concern with artificial intelligence while he was making Oppenheimer. It's like, well, that may not have actually been a preoccupation during it. And actually, one thing that's funny is one movie that does make the relationship a bit more explicit is Ex Machina, and nobody talks about that comparison. So, I don't know. I kind of put it in two buckets. There's the things that will maybe enhance your understanding or appreciation of a movie, and then there's sort of the bucket of things of people just trying to sell more tickets. And obviously, I have a preference for one over the other. So I guess the thing that interests me is that when you have so many years, I mean, Coppola's been trying to make Megalopolis for decades. Like, just how much of it, how much do you really want to buy that these very contemporary concerns were the main point of the film? Hey, Dozer Trouble, how you doing? I don't take attendance. I'm happy to see you here, though. The star is the card of hope. In that darkest of nights, there is a light that shines the path to home. The star is inspiration, motivation, and gives us strength to move forward. No, there we go. Sorry, still trying to cover Megalopolis. Then there's a couple of things that have sort of turned me off the movie is, like, I think the city is called New Rome, and like the main character's first name is Caesar, and like the antagonist's apparently his last name is Cicero, and I'm like, okay, can we just settle down for a minute here? Like, but I don't know, maybe it'll make more sense if I see the show. But I think one of the things that is kind of interesting about the story here is that at least the coverage seems to be that this is a $120 million film that is self-financed, and apparently it is having some difficulty finding a distributor. And this kind of leads me to a not very popular view that I have, but I think an important one in terms of filmmakers. So the most common thing that you will hear about directors is, if only those infuriating money men, or if only the producers, if only the studios would get out of the way, then we could realize their genius. And that's kind of the narrative that at least some people are pushing on Megalopolis right now, which is, this is such a bold film that it could only have been self-financed. And of course, now it's actually struggling to find an American distributor. And I believe the international distribution rights are conditional on the film finding a U.S. distributor. So we'll see. And I also imagine that probably one of the things that isn't being discussed is the, I think I'm going to change the filter to Tarot. Oh, wow. Just a really obvious one. Is that it? Guess so. I imagine part of that is, so I suspect that the rights would not be in question if the American distribution rights could be obtained for $1. Or a remarkably favorable share, right? I am assuming that part of the challenge also comes down to the price at which those rights are obtained. Now, I'm definitely not trying to say that filmmakers who self-finance should be grateful that the studios even deign to look at them. Like, clearly, you should be fairly compensated for the work that you do. But I will also say one of the challenges
Back in the game. Guess you liked it, huh? Got a vehicle to track down. Something interesting in the back, too.
one of the challenges introduced by self-financing is the studios kind of know the advantage that they have. Like, if you've committed a lot of money to a particular film, and you can't get that money recovered until someone distributes it for it. That is obviously a lot of leverage that they have, particularly if there aren't a lot of bidders. And so I imagine at least part of this story is not just a willingness to distribute, but also the the terms of the sale. Like I said, people should be fairly compensated for their work. On the other hand, distributing a film like that is a risk, and so chances are a studio's not going to want to do that unless, like, essentially they're going to want a price to justify their risk. And you can very reasonably say, what about the what about the filmmaker's risk? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is, well, they've already taken the risk, right? The studio's not going to, or the distributor's not going to keep the, is not going to factor that in, because they want the best outcome for themselves. Side note, is Cyberpunk 2077 any good now? It had a rough launch. So here's the thing. I actually like this game even back at launch.
Try not to ding the ride. Client's a picky one.
From what I understand, a very large part of the negative coverage sort of stemmed from the console versions, like on previous generation console versions. Now, I encountered plenty of bugs when I first played it, but it didn't stop me from enjoying the game. Maybe I'm just in a particularly forgiving mood, and I was actually a bit of a skeptic of the game, so I was in that tough spot of being skeptical leading up to the release, and then also being one of the minority in terms of people talking about it, to say that it was actually pretty good. So the thing to remember about Cyberpunk is that if you took a look at the player count, it was always a popular game. At the height of the the backlash on the game and such, it was always one of the top games being played on Steam. And I suspect that this sort of redemption arc that's been built is as much people just recognizing the game for what it is and having this catalyst as it is the game necessarily being improved that much. Now, that said, there are actually some substantial changes that have happened in terms of Phantom Liberty, and I think they're all good changes. But I also sort of feel like I need to give the devil its due. The launch was rough from a press coverage point of view. And again, the game definitely had some optimization issues. So, like, one of the really famous sequences that the game was sold on was this car sequence with a character named Dexter Deshawn, which actually really made the computer struggle to render. But overall, like, my feeling on it is that there was kind of this overcompensation for the borderline arrogant marketing campaign for the game, and it did stop productive conversation about the merits of it. And overall, like, I would say probably the best model for this is, like, if you like CRPGs with maybe a little bit more action. So, I'm thinking something along the lines of sorry, I should maybe not say CRPG, because that means different things to different people. But if you like something in sort of the Skyrim or Fallout or Outer Worlds model, and
Oh yeah, I knew I picked the right merc for the gig. My man will take care of the rest.
and maybe throw in sort of a layer of almost a kind of Grand Theft Auto feeling. then this is a perfectly enjoyable game that you can have a lot of fun with, and it has always been like that. And that ultimately, what somebody getting the game now is sort of getting out of it is, all of those bug fixes and clearly some adjustments to the game based on the feedback that they got. So yeah, I mean, again, I can't say it wasn't a rough launch just because people's opinions are kind of a matter of public record, but I did at least want to address the fact that I feel that the negative reception to the game is overstated. Anyways, I will, if you have specific questions about the game, feel free to bring them up. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Megalopolis just because I want to at least sort of close that thread if I can, but if people don't find it interesting, I'm happy to move on to other topics. But yeah, so the one thing I'll say is there's the question in terms of risk, right? There's the business decision, but the other half of that is to say it's like, well, we do want good movies, and sometimes, the studio system is not a good way to make those things happen. Now, it is worth remembering, right? The studio system has given us, everything from like Casablanca to, The Matrix. John Wick is a Hollywood picture, and people seem to really enjoy those movies. Now, I mean, again, I want to be careful, right? Like, I'm not trying to put, John Wick beside like McCabe and Mrs. Miller or something like that. But, when people want to complain about the studio system, generally the people complaining about that are not, they're not people who dislike John Wick. All right, I've alerted the police again. I mean, it's one person. Come on, it can't be that urgent. All right, I kind of screwed up, but I might be able to outrun it.
Suspect's vehicle has been located. Details have been sent. Suspect has disappeared. All units on site continue searching the area.
So the real question, of course, is the show any good? And I don't know. I haven't seen it. But the one thing I will say that I think is an interesting indicator is if you take a look at filmmakers who had very successful movies to a point where studios couldn't say no to them, and then compare that with their later output. So I think Christopher Nolan is probably somebody who is a good example of somebody who has quite a bit of leverage and gets to do things the way that he wants. And I think he's done well. Like, it's very hard to sort of look at a film that he's made that. Let me just see.
Who would have thought?
The Empress. The Empress is a card of femininity and motherhood. She is authoritative, knows what she wants, and exhibits refinement and sensuousness. The Empress symbolizes creativity and growth and instructs us not to dismiss our unconscious impulses, but to trust our intuition. So yeah, I mean, again, I realize it's not the most original thing to say Christopher Nolan is a good filmmaker, but I think he's actually something of an exception to filmmakers who have been given... Oh, I forgot to do a French lesson. I think he's an example of a filmmaker who's been given some freedom in terms of the studio system and has largely used it in a way that results in, a similar, if not better quality of film to what came before. But you have other examples of this. James Cameron, I think, is another example of this. But then you have someone like Peter Jackson, and it's very hard to say, like, even the Lord of the Rings films, it feels like they kind of they kind of outstay their welcome by the end. And definitely when you see something like a King Kong movie where the Skull Island sequence is longer than the original King Kong, these are kind of indications, to me at least, of someone who worked better in the face of the constraints. Like having people tell you no sometimes can actually result in a better show. And I think there's an argument for some people that this also would be the case with the Wachowskis, that the first Matrix is considerably better than the sequels, and that it did sort of, there was this nice counterbalance where you definitely want the creative talents to be given the freedom to do something new, but you don't necessarily want that to be like, it shouldn't always be the creative genius gets what they want. I think there are fewer people who have used that well than would like to think have used it well. And again, this is the problem any creative industry has, right? It's very difficult to know who sorry. It's very hard to know, right? Like this is the reason why Valve wants to open up Steam, or did open up Steam, and why a lot of people resist that, but there really isn't a good alternative. Nobody really knows what the next hit is, right? You cannot rely on, some kind of a gatekeeper to say, Stardew Valley is allowed to try and find success, but Terraria isn't, right? It's gotta, I'm sorry to sound like a complete, econ nerd about this, but the market's gotta find its answer. Like they're the ones who are going to assign the price, and they're going to be kind of what decides what succeeds and doesn't. And again, not everyone does well under that system. People who are good at self-promotion do well under that system, but people who aren't necessarily good at that need to get in touch with people who are. Otherwise, there's problems. Anyways, I'm kind of losing the plot a bit. So the challenge here with Megalopolis is that this may be an example of a film that actually needed that needed that influence from an outside source, needed someone to say, hey, I want to see you do well, and I've got some money attached to this, but like this is not exactly where we should be going. I don't quite know the right way to put it, but it could be that this is one of these shows that actually would have done better in more restricted circumstances, simply because, again, everybody kind of likes to say that the Apocalypse Now production was troubled, and it's like, yes, but I don't know if anybody who went through that would necessarily say, and wasn't it a good thing it was so troubled? Like maybe a firmer hand would have prevented some of the problems. I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to read The Struggle for Neil Station, and I may actually need to take a small break again. The Struggle of Neil Station. The European Space Council started out with seemingly noble intentions. We'll open the door to the universe, the solar system, home to all, and so on and so forth. It didn't take long for these catchphrases to reveal themselves for what they were: colonial ambitions wrapped up in lofty ideals. We, the builders and first inhabitants of O'Neill 1, have witnessed this firsthand. The ESC sent us into space with promises of a new life and a better tomorrow. Instead, what lay in wait for us was a complete lack of freedom and backbreaking work in extremely dangerous conditions. We would have pulled through. We would have toughed it out for the greater good if only they treated us as human beings, informed us of their decisions, listened to our concerns and requests, but the ESC ignored us. The consequences were inevitable. In 2022, after completing construction of the station, our situation was critical. Station management demanded 18 hours of work every day, 7 days a week, from everyone, regardless of age or health condition. Our peaceful protest was met with a disproportionate use of force, which included stun guns. They thought it would break us, just like the countless protests they broke back on Earth. The thing is, out here, it's not so easy to call for reinforcements. Workers outnumbered guards 40-1, and one stun gun charge held only 15 rounds. The ESC's management had effectively shot themselves in the foot. It was over before they could realize. Only 7 hours passed before O'Neill 1 and O'Neill 2 declared independence and became the first nations established outside of Earth. Okay, is anybody going to mind if I take a small, I don't know, 5 to 7 minute break? I hate to say this, but it is purely because I forgot to do a French lesson, and I would like to keep that streak, and I do not know what time it resets, but I would feel very bad if I wound up going later on the stream and discovered that I'd lost something just for want of 15 minutes. Okay, there are 2 cards that we're missing. So I'm gonna find those on the map while I wait for any objections. And again, I'm sorry for not being a little better prepared, but the good news is it should be short, and I'll wrap my usual break into that, and hopefully that just means that it's a shorter wait rather than, or sorry, it just means it's a shift for a wait that would have already happened as opposed to new one. And I'm thinking, okay, thanks guys. Okay, I'm having some trouble finding the tarot cards, so here's what I'm going to do. We'll go back to dynamic. I'm going to put up the break sign. I will, I'll try and keep this short, but now is a great time to sort of get up, go to the bathroom, have a stretch, get a glass of water, do whatever it is. Like I said, I'll try and keep this short, but I do just want to make sure that I'm, everything's done, settled, and I'll be ready for an extended Cyberpunk stream. So I'll see you on a little bit. Better come back with French coffee, eh? And whoa, Cyberpunk 2077 is flatlined, so I don't know when that happened. I apologize, but I do have a coffee, in fact. And I don't know about my French, but it's not Duolingo. I was trying Busu, which Yessie and the Stars recommended. So I think I lost quite a few people in that. But what else do we have here? We've got Do What You Gotta Do. Go ahead, bro. Thank you. Better come back with French coffee. Thank you, Olaf. And I think we're good. But please don't let me stop you from trying to overthrow me, Dozer Trouble. Yeah, I do apologize. I try, so where I can, I prefer to, it's good to take breaks. If anything, Twitch streams don't take enough breaks, and I include myself inside of that. But ideally, I would like it to be for reasons like that, or properly taking a break, as opposed to, oh darn it, some app has its hooks in me and I want to maintain, this completely artificial target. But I mean, it works, right? So there you go. So I'm hoping I didn't lose too much in the crash. I don't know how close to the break the game shut out at, but
We've got some important guests in Dogtown. Hereby my personal invitation.
okay. And again, I don't need to spend too much time doing this, but just on the odd chance that there was something to stop me from seeing the tarot cards. Can't see it at a high level. Oop, it's dynamic. Can't see it close up. So I don't think there's much point in trying to talk to Misty here. So what I'll do, let's maybe see if I can find... I mean, the side jobs are a little tempting, but let's maybe see if I can do some of the cyber psychos on the way to finding some more car jobs. And it's only half a kilometer, so I'll run it in this case. Anyways, so one of the reasons why I was going on, here's the thing about Megalopolis, right? Like, it does touch on a couple of things that I think in general about creative industries, but I am absolutely not in a position to judge. I'm not in a position to judge Megalopolis because I haven't seen it. I'm not crazy about Coppola's sort of retort that, anonymous criticism isn't legitimate. I think it is fair to say that, some people are sort of taking a risk, particularly if they work at, having certain kinds of opinions, even if the filmmaker is not directly trying to, to step on you. And I'll be honest, Coppola doesn't really strike me as the kind of guy who's going to, take that kind of criticism lightly, at least based on his reaction here. But I mean, whether or not he's got the kind of pull to, end a career of someone who, said they didn't like his latest movie, I don't know about that. But it is one of these things, right, where people want to, they just want to avoid the trouble in the first place. And so there is a certain degree of caution. And I think that kind of needs to be factored in when, because I guess the thing I'd put it to you this way, right? If someone says they don't like the movie and they haven't put their name to that, what is it about them putting their name to the statement that makes it more legitimate, right? I can in fact believe, you know, when Coppola himself says, well, you know, this was just like Apocalypse Now. It's like, okay, well, you said it turned out then. Were you this worried about people anonymously trashing the, like, you know, why is it okay in this one case rather than another one? You know, basically, I just don't find that defense that convincing in this case here. I do think that for some statements, the, you know, people are saying is not enough. I think when it comes to the opinion of, you know, the quality of a recent movie, that's maybe not one of those. That's not one of those cases where you want to be, you know, asking for attribution. But the risk thing, well, I tried. Okay, too many items. But yeah, so the reason why I wanted to bring this up was actually this idea of self-financing.
Don't even want to find you.
Police officer's like, who could have done this? It'll take a minute to just clean out the inventory. On this note of risk, though, I think there's a couple of interesting differences to be found. Oh, you know what? I think I was gonna put away some items in my stash too. Well, we'll go after my current objective. Yeah, if you think of how games are made today, there are a lot of games that wind up being made on spec. And, you know, I think a lot of people maybe even feel like that's the only way that they can make it. But another reality that some creators are facing is that the terms under which they can get a deal with a publisher are so unfavorable when the, you know, when the publisher is financing the game in advance, that they're just not workable. They're basically just not workable terms. And I mean, again, you kind of need to, it does come down to the question. I mean, in the end, it's any kind of market thing, right? You know, there's the value that you think you're worth. Then there's the value that the market will bear, and it's obviously not a perfect system. I say this as somebody who is definitely underpaid and underappreciated in this work for quite some time. But it's what we have, and it is, you know, even when it hasn't always been to my benefit, I do sort of feel like it is a lot better than we sometimes give it credit for. I better hope that they don't want a pristine vehicle. Appropriate music for a combat run, though. So yeah, I mean, essentially, what you wind up with in terms of, so like here's kind of the really tough situation I feel like a lot of game developers wind up in. So first of all, if you want to make a game like this, you are talking to, you know, an Electronic Arts or an Epic, or, you know, I guess Ubisoft tends to make a lot of stuff internally. But essentially, you are looking for the kind of money, you're looking for the deep pockets that that these games have, and obviously not all of them turn out. Like EA, I think, deserves some credit for trying new things. You know, they did oh god, what was the game called? It was the fantasy Call of Duty, basically.
got a gift.
Um,
Thanks for the help, Pete. My chum will do the finishing touches.
I think I have in my library. It's like Heroes of Avium or something like that. Immortals of Avium. You know, that was under their originals label, right? That wasn't even the full partnership program that they brought back, and ultimately was how Respawn wound up sort of financing Titanfall and eventually becoming part of EA proper. You know, and sometimes these things don't work, and that means there's quite a bit of money that gets lost. Oh, well, we can definitely deal with that. But there's obviously a bunch of smaller scale projects that I think you know, people want to try and make, and those are in a little bit of a tricky spot too, because essentially what happens is, let's say,
When there's a will, there's a fucking way, am I right?
so, you know, let's say that you don't want to make a Cyberpunk scale game, right? So you have, you know, through one way or another, you're capable of getting the game financed before it's published. Assuming that you want to go ahead with a publisher, which is obviously its own question, but assuming you go down that path and you've already financed the game, the publisher is able to see the quality of what you've made, right? You know, if you spend that money and the game isn't very good, they have the option of saying no. In which case, presumably, you lose the, you know, the investment, or, you know, you at least take less favorable terms. And for some people, that may still be enough. But chances are, if you're going to have interest from a third party, it means that there's some quality for the game, but there's still a risk that that publisher is taking on, and so you may not be getting terms that you would consider to be that favorable anyway. Let me just read the conversation here. Archive conversation, Forrest Lee and Chris James. They wiped some of our guys. Who? Fuckers from that Corpo transport. Wasn't supposed to be any fucking hustle on that thing. Well, there was. Corpo soldiers plus a damn drone. Shit, who told us to grab that transport? Dean Simons. You know what to do. Yeah. What'd I do? Get the fuck out of town, Choom. The hell? Well, it wasn't me who talked. I always give you those transports. Why the fuck would I snitch? Why? Choom, I know you didn't mean to, but the boys don't get it. The transport you gave them was supposed to be clean, but it had hustle all over it. But I didn't know. I know, but the kids are dead, and you know how that goes. I'm gonna be weighted down again. I'll just pick up all this stuff and clean out the inventory again. So I think it is fair to say, I mean, again, there is a risk that the publisher's taking on, but it may be that you know, the terms are still favorable to the publisher, because again, they're in a situation where your recoupment strategy, like you've already imposed the cost. For them, they still have the outside option of saying no. And so yes, they have a slate that they need to fill. Like, it's not like, you know, it's not like these people don't have any pressures, but I think it's fair to say that it is fairly light compared to what someone who might be, you know, might have investors wondering where the return is, or, you know, their own money, you know, they need to find a way to make payroll, or any of the other possibilities that people run into. So another possibility, and this is one that you hear, especially if you talk to writers, I've noticed that there's a bit of a common story that pops up when people say, you know, okay, I found a publisher for writing, or I've been talking to publishers and they expect me, one way or another, the answer is like they're expecting me to already have an audience or to build an audience, and is like I thought that was their job, and it seems that that's not the case. So I'm just going to take a quick second here. Bonuses for headshot kills. I'm thinking this is the one I want to keep. So I'm basically just going to remove any of the duplicates. Quite a few Achilles here. So anything with a single is out. This one's kind of interesting. I'll hang on to those for now. Should maybe see if one of these is an improvement over my existing weapon. So the algorithm I'm sort of applying here, so we've got 2 Saratogas, but you notice that this one has 4 modification slots, whereas this one only has 2, so it makes sense to scrap this one just because it doesn't give me the same number of options. And I'm already below the limit, so I can sort of skip out on this whenever I want. But yeah, so as I was sort of trying to talk about before, we've kind of got this situation, like obviously it's not favorable to the people who are putting quite a bit on the line for it. And this would be, you know, somebody who's writing a book on spec, or somebody who's, you know, it may also be that I just haven't put a scope on it and that's why it doesn't have the dot, but it doesn't matter. I'm looking for something, looking for an excuse to clear out my inventory. You know, again, I don't mean to suggest that this is, you know, this is the way it is, so just get used to it, or, you know, nobody asked these people to write books or make games. You know, it's more just kind of a recognition of the situation that people find themselves in. But there are some exceptions to that. And, you know, it kind of touches on what I said before. You have this idea of people, you know, getting publishers and sort of finding out, wait a minute, isn't the publisher supposed to get me the audience? One of the things that has sort of worked for people is being able to build that audience themselves. So this is a Kyubi. It's got 3, so I wonder if I can get the 4. So we've got the Critoche, which isn't the most important. Yeah, this is fine. Okay, can't. So at minimum, I should be willing to do this. I don't think I want to put any of these on, but let's make sure. Well, this is good. I don't know if I really want to mess around with these mods right now. I've helped the weight. That's at least it's at least a good start. But yeah, so the answer is, you know, make a product that's very desirable, and at that point, of course, you get the bidding war, and you're in a position. But of course, the challenge there is it's a little bit like what you hear from just about every business when they're getting started, right? Which is, you know, it's when you have money that bankers are willing to talk to you, and of course, that's the last time that you actually. Yeah, well, that's not entirely true. Like, you know, money. Having access to credit is important for businesses. So it's not entirely true that, you know, the banks show up at a point when they're useless. I'm gonna take a bit of a flyer on this one. So if I do 7A 55, there we go. But yeah, I mean, essentially, you know, one of the best options that a game has is to build a whole bunch of buzz around. So, for instance, if you do a Kickstarter that is very successful, and you're in a position where presumably there is enough hype that you can actually probably self-publish. This is exactly the point that a publisher will come out and give you something that's a bit closer to the quote-unquote fair value of the game. And in some cases, this is not entirely wrong, because again, it is always worth recognizing that there is risk involved, and that the slant towards the publisher is the kind of a reflection of the risk that they're taking. But I am very, very sympathetic to people who feel pretty bad about it, because it's the situation I find myself in, right? That if you are not very good at promoting yourself, which is a really important skill to have nowadays, you are sort of left trying to appeal to people who, in theory, have this ability, and because they know their worth, they are going to charge. They're going to charge for it, and usually quite a bit. So, how we fix that, I don't know. Because I will also be honest, I don't think it's really good that we have this much attention and value assigned to getting people's attention, right? I mean, this kind of comes back to Plato's old complaints about the sophists. You know, I think it's not surprising that we see figures like Elizabeth Holmes emerge when we have a... I wonder if I can shoot that thing and get a... Okay. I'm gonna have to... Made her really mad. I'm guessing I probably lost that car, but let's see. Yeah, like, to me, it is not surprising that we have figures like Elizabeth Holmes emerge when you want a good story, right? When the value is less on the thing that's being built and a lot more on the ability to sort of get attention. I realize that this is always, like, this is pretty much a guaranteed way to make a conversation suck. But obviously, a very large part of Elon Musk's value is not necessarily whatever talent he brings to the table, so much as it is his ability to draw attention to himself and bring in money. And that is a real thing of value, right? They're raising money for an enterprise is not a given. So, but, you know, again, I think people would fairly say that there is a a considerable amount of baggage that comes with that, as I think a lot of people who are currently doing business with him have found out. So again, like I said, I don't have an easy answer for this, because it's easy for someone like me who maybe feels underappreciated, and I will even go so far as to say underappreciated relative to the value he brings, right? Like, so do I think my stream, quote unquote, should be larger? Maybe. Do I think it should be like hundreds of viewers larger? I mean, that's debatable, right? I'm not entirely sure that I do this better than the people with large audiences. Something that I used to pull, you know, back in Vancouver would maybe be, I think, would probably be what I would kind of consider to be an acceptable equilibrium. But the thing is, it's not like there's somebody who's deliberately going in and tilting the scales. I mean, the algorithm's the algorithm, right?
V, a few Zeta Tech corporals walked into an auto shop. The punchline, none came back out. Apparently, it's a family business that's fallen on hard times. My hunch is the owners finally snapped, and you know I got a nose for this stuff.
Okay. But yeah, again, the aim here isn't really to gripe too much about my own state. Death caused by severe concussion, most likely from an IED. It's more just to kind of talk about, you know, again, kind of the Megalopolis was the vehicle for this, but it is actually, I would say, probably even more common in terms of gaming, for the simple fact that so many, like, it's considerably easier to make a game now than it is to make a film, which is kind of interesting if you think about it, right? Because just about everybody has a pretty high quality camera available to them in their phone. And it's not that difficult to get access to editing tools. So, like, you know, not everybody's necessarily going to be an Apple fan, but, you know, if you have a Mac, you have access to iMovie, and if you have a somewhat modern phone, there's actually been quite a bit of effort put into Drat. Can't do system collapse, but I can maybe start with a Cyberpunk malfunction and a short circuit. I'm getting my ass kicked. Not a good plan. Probably just rely on the shock, but obviously I need to heal up first. So maybe I even just avoid the cyberware malfunction and go purely for the shock. That's going to cost me 9. Ow. Well, I guess that gives me a chance to try and sneak up on him again. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's always valuable to just, you know, appreciate when you're sort of talking your own book. It is difficult for me to get too mad with the current state because I know just directly I am addressing a specific challenge that I've had in terms of being able to get the word out. And like I said, I think there is a decent argument to be made that this is not necessarily a great set of priorities, but I can also understand why, you know, why there's value in it. But the one thing I will say, like when it comes to filmmaking, for one reason or another, I think it's probably just the fact that so much of it does involve other people doing other things. So at the minimum, you know, unless you're doing something very abstract, there's a very good chance that you're going to need some kind of cast, right? You're going to need actors. And they can be amateurs, they can be, you know, they don't necessarily have to be people with a lot of experience, but... Damn it. I got a little greedy on that, so it's not like... Oh, but... Oh, you know what? He's probably just gonna get... Yes, done. I did not do myself any favors by dumping all my, I mean, 30%, I guess that's not nothing, but... Kind of naked gun, isn't it? That's no good. So I gotta be careful I don't kill the guy, but... Take one more hit from the pistol. I might be able to get away with another one, but I don't want like a crit to ruin my chances, so... Oh, you're kidding me. I mean, it's fair enough that they're allowed to do that, but man, that makes it really tough to do the Cyber Psycho missions. I was really hoping that would do the job for me, but another hit of the short circuit ought to do the trick. Or I just punch him in the face. Although the problem with that is sometimes I punch too many times and I wind up killing the guy. So it's possible I killed him. There was a positive number in his health when I did the hit. I'm gonna reload if it was fatal. License? What license? Hey, I got a cease and desist from Zeta Tech. They say I'm using that lift in my shop without a license. What is this? I bought the whole shop from them. Spent my life savings on it. They want to get me again because of some license? Could you check and see if they made a mistake somewhere and what sort of eddies we're talking about? Gaston, I contacted Zeta Tech on your behalf, and it does seem that the equipment in the shop was not included in the deed. You bought the shop building, 4 walls, the floor, and the ceiling. That's it. I asked about the price of the tech, but they're unable to give an estimate because the shop in which it's located has been bought out. But I'm the one who bought it out. I think I would know. So what do we do now? Now they have to buy it back from you, and since prices have fallen in the area, you stand to lose a fair amount. But then we have priority to buy it back. And if we want to speed up the process, we could give them an offer right now to purchase the shop and equipment along with the loan approval for whatever is needed to cover the difference. That's the good news. Bad news is the equipment costs about double the shop itself. Fine, I don't know, go ahead and file that loan application so I don't lose my chance. Then I think I'll think it over some more. Besides, what's a shop without equipment? I can't even work without it. Alright, Gaston, it's ready. I just need the signature and you can reopen. Great, thank you for the help. It's hard to deal with all this by myself. I'm going back to work, finally. Need someone to watch your back. We've read this before. And Venus Nanogel Scam Alert. Let's see what... Oh, damn it. Yeah, this is why I don't like doing physical attacks, because it's way too easy to accidentally kill someone. Alright, he's already dead there, so... Once more with feeling. Not what I meant to do, but... So what I'm going to do this time is just disable on this side, where I can at least. Yeah, I don't get to take everything out, I guess, but... Huh. So there's obviously a couple of these which I couldn't take out, but so I guess the big trick on this one is to... Oh, you're joking! This guy's very tough to... So at this point I'm basically going to save up all the all the cyberware until the very end of the fight. That was very stupid. Putting myself in a dangerous position here because there's mines that haven't exploded in the area, but I need to also... Okay, that's not so bad. I'm back in a slightly safer place, and he's got a few more mines in his area. So now should be the time that I hit him with as many stunning attacks as I can. That is going to be a real shame that that does not take him out. So unfortunately, I'm really just waiting for the... Okay, hopefully... Alright, auto ship owner was on a rampage, but I managed to put him to sleep. The way corps here gobble up small businesses, it's almost painful to watch. Before they even clock what's happening, the owners are locked out of their own premises and slapped with a colossal debt. Then they bust their asses for the corp from morning to midnight to make ends meet. Looks like this one preferred, to take his own life than to give the one place that was his. Give up the one place that was his. See how quickly the American dream can turn into the American nightmare? So, obviously... timely in terms of what we were talking in terms of the risk that you put into certain types of game development. The one thing I should say that probably isn't appreciated as much in these conversations too, there are some things that people can do to mitigate their own risks. So there is, I think, a very real problem in terms of game development where people have simply take too long. So I'm just going to take a second here. Due to the failure to uphold the terms of agreement number UPL 12064 and the failure to respond to the letter of demand for outstanding payment number 11055 in accordance with paragraph 628 of the aforementioned agreement, the real property shall become the property of Zetatech within 2 days of receipt of this document. This decision is not subject to appeal. But yeah, so, you know, this is very difficult to talk about in terms of recommendations because there's recommendations that you will hear people make in general, and then there are then you can see so many counter examples, and it's difficult to come down too hard one way or the other for the simple reason that, like, again, nobody knows. This is probably the one consistent point you can find in just about any advice, particularly in creative industries. So very often you will hear people say, you'll hear people say, do like an evenings and weekends project, or start small, do game jam projects or whatever. All of that is actually very good advice. It's consistent with this idea of not putting too much risk into a given project. But I also need to admit, like, one of my favorite debut games is Gunpoint, which was an evenings and weekends project for Tom Francis, but was made over like 5 years. Stardew Valley, effectively the creator of that sort of relied on his girlfriend to support him for a very large period of that production. I think he worked at a movie theater or something like that. So now I suspect that, I don't know about Gunpoint, but I know there's a lot of games which are sort of seen as overnight successes, which are more, you just simply didn't see the stuff that the developer did ahead of time. They were either game jam games, or maybe something on an itch page, or maybe never released. So like Hollow Knight, for instance, there was a game that Team Cherry had put out on Newgrounds before Hollow Knight. But yeah, I mean, in one sense, right, like, I don't think it's a bad bit of advice to say, don't spend a whole lot of time on one project, right? That's kind of that's like a betting the farm sort of situation. With your time, you may not see a specific like dollar value attached to those costs, but I mean, your time is one of the most valuable things you have, right? It's basically the same amount for everyone. I think people probably don't do as good of a job valuing it as much as we should. I know I don't. So as a consequence, right, you can see if you actually consider time, if you were to map it out in terms of a monetary value. Obviously, I'm going to have to deal with the police. Okay, not so good.
Who let him in here?
Cool. But yeah, I mean, again, if you were to assign, I mean, just like take whatever rate you would make working at a job, and then apply that to however long it would take you to make your quote unquote dream game, and imagine that is the budget of the game, right? That's what it cost you. That's what you would need to. That's what you should expect to get back for it to be considered a success. And I think there's a lot of projects that probably wouldn't actually pass that test. That's not the best way of accounting for it, but it is the simplest way of accounting for it. But yeah, I mean, again, barring other circumstances, ones that will tell you that taking the extra time is worth it, it really is I think it really is the case that probably one of the easiest things that you can do is to not spend too much on a game, right? Not spend too much does not mean don't spend anything, because obviously there has to be something of value, and presumably there are efficiencies that you can get by hiring experts or by paying for something than trying to do everything yourself. But the fact that you're not betting the farm on a single project obviously gives you that kind of leverage with a publisher. You don't, it's no longer this case where I can't see any return unless I sign this unfavorable deal. And presumably people would feel better about the deals that they're taking in that context too. I'm trying to think if I want to try. I might be able to try and buy another car, but let's do the Cyber Psycho sighting. And if we find a terminal to buy a car, then I'll follow up on that. We still have 5 hours before I can go meet Songbird. By the way, I will say I really like. I don't know if there's like a canonical version of this, but I actually really like the way that they did Never Fade Away in this game. In fact, one of the things that was kind of funny is during Dead Space, got a little existential on it, sort of talking about the horror in the game and sort of this idea, the way that it sort of twists common ideas of immortality, and it's not necessarily the only game or story to have done that, but it's definitely an interesting take. But we have talked about along similar lines in terms of the parallels between Johnny and Saburo, in terms of this idea of sort of this unnatural extension of something that is intended to be finite. And I feel in the case of Cyberpunk that's actually a little bit closer to the core of the story, right? Because you've got V's concerns with his mortality, you've got Johnny's concerns with his immortality, and likewise Saburo's. But also you see it constantly reinforced with things like the passages from the Iliad that are included, and even some of the questions that Dex asks you. There's a few different ways that that comes up. V, heard North Side's been seeing some action. Got Maelstromers hauling ass out of there. Go see what's going on exactly. Okay, I'm pretty sure I remember that. I think I actually ran into a club on this one. But I'll see if I can get a stealthier approach this time.
Well.
Cause of death, shock, and blood loss due to multiple lacerations. Of course, the difficulty in me talking about Saburo right now is we're actually on the Phantom Liberty story. So obviously that's not the same, it's not necessarily the same set of concerns. Then again, I'm also assuming that we're going to be seeing some fairly significant development in that story. Okay, I need to find a way to stay hidden until I can distract this guy. Maybe. Doesn't seem to have gotten his attention. Okay, that's more promising. It was also a very tight window for me. Ooh. Okay, well at least it doesn't have a hair trigger like the other guy. I kind of want to go for it, but I'm reasonably safe here.
Hey.
Farewell. Tomorrow, I've been trying to reach you ever since they took me. I know you're looking, and I know you'll find me eventually, but I don't know how to make it any easier. I don't think I can get on the net. I should have listened when you taught me how, but now I fucked myself. Honestly, I don't even think you'll recognize me if you saw me. I know I don't. I should just stick a barrel down my throat and be done with it. I'm such a fucking monster. Fuck me. Gang ain't taking me back, not without a bag over my head. I got these like tractor hands and ugly as sin red eyes. All I can think of now is your chooms who poisoned you to me, telling you not to get with a Valentino, that'll leave you for someone else, vanish without a word. I'm gone, and they'll beat their chests all justified to tell you, told you so, but they couldn't be more wrong. It's driving me loco to feel like my head's going to explode in a million pieces. I can feel the pressure building and building and building, and but I don't know when it's going to pop. Okay. I'm assuming there's a... Oh, no. I just need to message Regina. Our kid was a Valentino, not a Maelstromer. Borg friends must have had an axe to grind with him because they stuffed him with implants like a fucking Christmas turkey and just watched and waited for him to blow. Same would happen to anyone chipped that fast. Body didn't have time to adjust to the wear and turned him psycho. Good thing he still had a little self-control left. Meant I could take him down quietly. Looks like our guy didn't even have to piss them off. A while ago, Maelstrom put out word that it was looking for volunteers to test some new wear. Obviously, nobody stepped up, so the Borg fucks just started scooping peeps off the street. Valentino's been looking for this kid for a while, not to mention the runner who swarmed the net with data feelers trying to track him down. Eventually, he must have broken free and fought for his life, made the Maelstromers reap what they sowed. The whole thing backfired on them spectacularly. Good thing he managed to get him to go down softly. Kid's still young. Maybe with the right kind of help, he could learn to adapt to his new condition. I'm assuming there's not much else for me in this area here, but I'm just going to take a quick peek. I always do like taking the time to go around the environments too, just because like the different types of graffiti and what's communicated by that, I do think is kind of interesting. Okay, I am curious what's causing that. Can't even... I feel like I'm going away from the sound, so... I guess there's room for traffic above. Didn't really get me anything. Alright, let's carry on. Again, I am sort of just waiting to get in touch with Songbird, but that doesn't mean that I need to... I mean, if I'm going to stay idle, I might as well just do fast travel or equivalent. So, I've kind of been going north to south when it comes to the Cyber Psycho sightings. Just, it seemed as easy as anything else. I'm not all that hopeful that I'm going to find any more tarot cards. I'll take a second here and queue up Songbird.
Who would have thought?
Nope. I thought there was an NCPD event nearby. Okay, I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm actually going to head towards Songbird here and just see if I can find something to do on the way. Here we go.
Alright, flipping you the cords. This little cruiser's very eager to swap hands.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how far I want to talk about this, but I am a little curious. Does anybody know that CD Projekt Red was hacked?
One more thing. You hear that? Clock's a ticking. Time waits for no Jew.
This would be fun.
Absolutely out of line. Oh!
So the reason I ask, I believe it was some kind of ransom attack in the sense that like they stole the files and I think looked for a payment not to post them. So this certainly wouldn't be the only game company that this happened to. I think Insomniac got hit by a similar attack as well. And it's tricky too, right? Because one of the reasons why those attacks can sometimes work is when people, when people effectively give the people asking for the ransom leverage, right? So this is why I'm a little reluctant to talk about that, because, the one thing you don't want is people going and looking for the goods. But one of the reasons why I thought it was kind of an interesting case is that there was also a situation where I don't think it was a hack, but there was an adventure game and sort of like the LucasArts model for Warcraft that Blizzard had done. I think it like told the story of Thrall, which is obviously told in Warcraft, but
Close now, but lose the deal or wipe them out yourself.
I think like Warcraft 3 kind of did the plot that adventure game was supposed to have, but apparently it was actually in a reasonably complete state. I have no idea where I need to go. I don't think it'll matter because there's no way I'm dealing with those guys in 30 seconds. Spoke too soon.
Not gonna lie, you got a gift.
But this does kind of raise, I mean, so there's a couple of
For the
questions
help, my chum will do the finishing touches.
in terms of how journalists should handle something like that. So I think in the case of the Insomniac hack, there was a kind of this feeling, at least among the journalists that I follow, that this should not be the sort of thing that they report on. Like the news that was broken by it shouldn't be reported on, because in the end, this is very damaging to the company. And it was inappropriate that it was released. Now again, there's a challenge with that, because you sort of need everyone to agree, and of course there's the benefit of the scoop, so there's always going to be a defector in that case. But then there's the question of something like the Warcraft adventure game. So I have no idea how the journalist that covered it got it. It definitely wasn't similar to the circumstances under which, these other cases. Sorry, I just need a second here. 44,550, I think, is the highest. Nope, 49,500. Let's go from the bottom up. Nope, 5,600. Oh, really, Olaf? Yeah, so there's apparently a playable build of the 51,700 of the Warcraft adventure game, including voice acting, and they ultimately decided not to release it. And there was a journalist who did cover it. But again, because presumably this is not the product of a hack, this is, maybe a leak. But I mean, again, we tend not to think of like I think we think of leaks and hacks as distinct events, and one is maybe a little bit more justified than the other. But especially from sort of a historical point of view, right? Like, there really isn't a lot that's shown in terms of the progress of a game, and particularly in the case of Cyberpunk, which very obviously went through quite a few different iterations. There's stuff that they were talking about over the course of development that never made it into this version of the game. It would be interesting to see what earlier builds looked like, and maybe some of the the directions the game might have gone. So, for instance, for me, I'm actually kind of curious how much Grand Theft Auto informed this game, right? Because you can definitely feel a bit of the Grand Theft Auto DNA, and I don't think that CD Projekt Red is bad to learn from Grand Theft Auto 5. Like, there is a reason that game is at the top sellers of Steam kind of year in and year out. But it's also quite different from the sort of thing that CD Projekt Red normally does. And obviously you don't want to be completely beholden to how other... Like, essentially, if all that you're going to do is make other companies' games, you know, you either need to be really good at keeping costs low, or you're probably just not going to do as well, right? You have to add something to make it worth it for people to buy and play. But, you know, again, I would feel bad that if, you know, the only way that we... And again, I don't know what was revealed in that attack, or even if anything related to Cyberpunk was part of it. I think somebody said that there was like that they're able to build The Witcher off of it, but you know, The Witcher is obviously a game you can already play, so okay, I'm not gonna go into Dogtown quite yet. We still have a couple of hours. But yeah, there's sort of that question in terms of like, well, actually, you know what? Maybe the better example I could take would be something like the release of the diplomatic cables.
To all nearby units, suspicious activity reported in Pacifica.
Or, you know, other examples like that. Like, it's very difficult to look at something like that and say, you know, okay, now that it's out there, you know, we're all just going to agree not to look at them. But I think it's also kind of fair to say that, you know, this is probably something that shouldn't have been released, and it does feel kind of bad to be using them. All right.
Code 0. I repeat, Code 0 in this area. All units resume normal duties.
But I suppose maybe what the argument is that rather than relying on coincidences about, you know, crimes being committed, is there some way that we can maybe hope for better preservation? Because there's so many of those stories that you hear, right? Like the source code of famous games are lost or otherwise tied up in terms of sort of rights squabbles. And I feel that there is quite a bit that we could get from, you know, and I'm not even talking in the sense of, you know, being able to play classics in the modern day. I'm really just thinking in terms of sort of understanding where a project went, right? We have examples in terms of, you know, like writing. So my Norton Anthology of English Literature doesn't just include the poems that, you know, we consider very famous and, you know, and important and part of the development of you know, of the literary canon. We also have sort of the notes, like in some of the passages in the appendix show the specific marks, you know, certain words being crossed out and, you know, alternative lines coming in. You actually get to see the thought process of the poet as they are creating this work, which with the benefit of hindsight we know is a major enough moment in the history of the English language to merit inclusion in this anthology of English literature. Now, unless, so I don't know if, I don't know what the status of the source code for the original Civilization is. We have Sid Meier's memoir, which is very good. So where I'm actually specifically thinking of in this one is the often told story about an overflow error leading to nuclear Gandhi. This story is not true. This story has apparently been told to people by Firaxis employees. But Sid Meier himself has said that this never actually happened. And it's, again, I completely understand why stories like these have legs, right? It's a fun one to believe, right? Overflows are a real thing. So for those of you maybe not familiar with it, so I think most people understand that numbers in computers are represented through binary, right? So you can think of each position. So you kind of think of a I guess this depends on how old your relatives are, but I think some of you may know, there are these pill holders which have days of the week, and you kind of put the pills inside of them. If you ever played the board game Mancala, you could use that as an analogy. But basically, whatever you use, think of them as having a series of little buckets in front of them, and these buckets are powers of 2. So you've got 2 to the power of 0, and that's 1. And then you got 2 to the power of 1, well that's 2. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. And then basically keep multiplying by 2 and you'll get the next number. And binary is assembled by saying, it's okay, I've got, 1 in the 1s column, and, none in the 2s, none in the 4s, but 1 in the 8s. And so you add those together. What's 1 and 8? Well, that's 9. And so, okay, this is the representation of 9. 1, 0, 0, 1. So, and this, this is just how computers think of it. It's not the only way, incidentally. So there was, in the Soviet Union, a computer known as the Seton, and it used a ternary system. And apparently, it was actually quite a bit more efficient than the binary system that they ultimately replaced it with. Can I be a law-abiding citizen? Somebody doing crimes around here? You are. You're doing the crimes. It'll get a little tricky, but... So anyways, you've got this representation in terms of numbers, but then the question might be, well, how do you represent a negative number? Well, if you know that all the numbers are going to be negative, that's actually not that hard. You just don't bother to represent the negative. You just say, okay, well, this is the number, and we know the number is a negative. But maybe you say you want to have some positive and negative numbers. Well, what you do is you take one of those bits, and you say, instead of representing a power of 2, this is going to tell me whether it is positive or negative. And it's what's known as a signed or unsigned integer. So, a 1-bit number, I guess, would be what's known as a Boolean, and that's basically a true or false value.
Can't hurt to look.
Yeah. Great. Darn it, excuse me. I really wanted to system collapse.
What an awful place!
Why aren't you answering? Keenan, fuck. You even know what time it is? Sure do, and I know who ordered the hit on Logan. Who? Some chick, Monica Steiner. That guy's mom? Lenny's mom? Yep. Knows things are heating up. Wants to skip town, paid some smugglers, gotta get a crew together. Catch her before she flies. You in? Sure fucking am. Cool. Be there in 10. Yeah, so you've got this idea here, right? You've got a certain number of bits to represent a number. But what you will often do if you want to represent positive and negative numbers, you want to give up one of those bits to be able to represent whether the number is negative or positive. Hey, sent the scratch. Okay, get ready, grab a gun, goggles, in case there's a sandstorm, a week's worth of food or water. All right, listen, can't be sure someone won't follow me. Not good. Who? Animals. Very not good. What did you do? One of them killed my son, so I took his life in exchange. An eye for an eye. Girl, these are the things you mentioned up front. You're radioactive now. I'd be wise to cut loose here, but shit, whatever. We'll see what we can do. Appreciate it. See you in 2 hours. Overpass El Camino de Mor. Don't be late. Incidentally, I don't actually think you need to know about signed and unsigned integers to understand overflows. It's just kind of helpful. I find it helpful to use negative numbers to start with, and then you can adjust accordingly. So again, keeping in mind that computers are finite machines, and particularly old computers, which are quite limited in terms of what they can do, you want to make you don't want to unnecessarily use up resources. So for instance, if I know that I'm going to be working with numbers between 0 and 100, or negative 100 to positive 100, I'm not going to want to use a 64-bit integer, right? 2 to the 64 is considerably higher than 100. But you also don't want it to be too small, because you do at least want to cover the range of values that that you're choosing the data type for. Now, there's also an operation known as a checked one or an unchecked one. So computers obviously want to do things as efficiently as possible, and so there are some efficient ways of handling things like addition. And very often the fastest ways to do things involve just sort of focusing on your immediate task, right? So, did the number go up? If you add by 1, we'll just move the position for 1 up. And if it was already 1, pass it over to the next value. But again, each individual spot worries about its own business, doesn't necessarily worry about the whole picture. And you can make it so that it does actually check. But that means that you now add an operation to do that check, which again costs you a bit of efficiency.
You're killing me here. Come on!
See ya, suckers.
Hey, B. 3 new wheels, huh? Give you the delivery address now.
That was obviously a really messy way to leave, but it worked. Assuming he doesn't want the thing in perfect condition. So the big difficulty that you run into is what happens if, you're doing this whole chain, everything's in a 1. And you add 1. Well, this is where you get an overflow. Damn it. And in the case of an overflow, what happens is, I guess if you were at the maximum number and then you added 1, everything would go to 0. And of course, because there's no next number to roll over into, you go from the highest possible number to the lowest possible number. And again, if you've got signed, that basically means you can go from a really big number to a negative. And if you have an unsigned integer, it basically means that you go from a really big number to 0. And then, of course, vice versa, right? If you subtract 1 from the lowest number, then I'm really glad he does not want this thing in pristine condition. Or maybe he did, and it's just not bothered to trigger it at this point. So anyways, the Gandhi story, it's a little bit like that thing that people were saying. So there's this story that was going around that, so why do you get these really big boxes for small orders from Amazon? And somebody said it's like, it's so that...
Something else. Client's got a strict deadline. Seems he's on his way out.
Sure, why not?
Need you to helter-skelter me.
It's to make sure that everything fits in the delivery car or something like that. And this kind of lines up with some of our priors in terms of Amazon as this like really efficient company.
Oh yeah, I knew I'd pick the right merc for the gig. My man'll take care of the rest.
The big problem with that story,
Check the
though,
drop points for reward.
is that the
Spend
optimization
it all on XPDs and glitter.
the optimization doesn't work as soon as you deliver a single package, right? You've broken the nice big block as a result. And if you can't and then it's like, okay, well, what if maybe it's specifically designed in such a way that as you deliver them, it retains a certain shape. Amazon's that smart. And then it's like, okay, well, what happens if you can't deliver a package then, right? They don't leave it. Usually, I mean, obviously it depends on where you're at, but in those situations, again, the supposed optimization just simply doesn't apply. The fact of the matter is, like, the real answer is probably more along the lines of the people working in the warehouse worked very hard, and they don't have a whole lot of time to do anything, so they grab the first available box and they throw something in it, which, one, makes a heck of a lot more sense, and number two is more in line with what people are actually observing on those on the floor. I have a friend who worked at an Amazon warehouse and was very happy to leave. So in the case of the Gandhi story, right, it lets you show off a little bit of your knowledge about how you represent things in terms of computers. It's obviously an older game, so you can see why you would want efficiencies in terms of how certain values are stored. And you can say, well, for Gandhi, of course it makes sense to have him be the most peaceful. And if something happens to make Gandhi even more peaceful, the idea of an overflow can lead him to be very aggressive. And again, not necessarily something, I mean, probably more important for me, I never played the original Civilization, so I don't really know if that was a real thing, or if that just happened to be, you've got the screenshot of Gandhi saying, our words are backed by nuclear weapons. And that's just a funny thing to see Gandhi say. But again, if you read Sid Meier's memoir, you'll know that this is not a real thing. I think even Designer Notes has actually said, had an interview with Sid Meier, or at least somebody who worked at Firaxis. It's actually hosted by somebody who worked at Firaxis. And I think that also talked about the urban legend. But assuming that, sorry, I know this is a long digression, for the main point. Assuming that Sid Meier did not write a memoir, or that we didn't have a podcast in which people talked about these sorts of things, would we live in a world in which this false belief about civilization, like how would we know better, right? How would we be able to correct something like that? And you know, again, I don't know where the source for the original civilization is.
Save yourself!
Not quite what I wanted to do. My aim leaves much to be desired, clearly.
All good. Let's go. Check the courts.
But the other difficulty is that because this is intellectual property for company. I mean, let's be honest here. There are two very valuable things that game companies have. One are the people, right? So I suspect probably like a majority of the.
Saw that coming a mile away. Motherfuckers won't let you go easy.
I think the majority of most game companies kind of leaves the parking lot at the end of the day. The other part of the value is its IP. And I've talked about this book
Right,
before,
now get the
but
fuck over here. Kinda in a hurry on this
oh
one.
Jesus, this is not gonna be easy. Good Lord. Let's try and get to the destination before I worry about any combat. Because I lost a lot of time on Okay, that was encouraging. I'm going to run into the police again, but... Did I give... Oh, I really thought I gave him the slip there. Maybe. I might have cleared him. Yeah, so I quite like reading the book Creative Selection by Ken Casienda. He's somebody who worked on the original iPhone. And he describes trying to solve the problem of a touch keyboard without a stylus. And one of the things that he used actually came from the repositories at Apple, which, like basically, as you might imagine, a tech company like Apple has had a lot of software developed over time, and I think this might have been something from the very early decades at Apple that wound up, doing just what they needed for. So essentially, what they needed to do was kind of predict the most likely word. This is the sort of thing that kind of gets turned into predictive text at this point. I don't think I'm going to make it. Like, health-wise, making it. Oh, maybe.
Fire at will!
Yes, and a very similar principle to predictive text is what made the touch keyboard work, for the basic reason that people's typing with their fingers wasn't precise enough to be able to hit the letters that they wanted. And so what that technology did was it actually made the letter for the most likely word bigger, and it kind of created this impression that you were hitting the correct letter at the time you wanted it. It's also incident. So if you've ever wondered, especially if you've used an older iPhone, it is actually why it felt like the phone was typing the wrong letter when you were sure you typed the right one. It's probably because the most common letter was near the one that you wanted to type. All right, I think we are close enough to 11. Yeah, I'm not trying to get that. But yeah, so basically it was that rare occasion where you were typing one word, there was a more common word, and it just so happens that the letters were close enough on the keyboard that the quote-unquote incorrect letter was highlighted, because, you know, obviously it works probabilistically. I also might be the only... I mean, it's not like I used the first iPhone, but it may be that I just type weird words more often. Maybe I'm the only one in this chat who noticed it. But I think that's a bit of an indication. I think that's not a bad story in terms of showing why why something like the source code wouldn't immediately be released, because you don't necessarily know what's going to be valuable to your company, right? The fact that Apple had that sort of thing sitting on the shelf allowed them, for a device that they never imagined at the time of writing that code, it wound up being fed, it wound up solving a problem into this future technology. And, you know, it's not to suggest that the technology behind it, I mean, obviously, Apple's not the only place that sort of thought about those particular problems. But essentially, by releasing that code out, they would be theoretically arming their competitors to replicate what they did with the iPhone faster. And I mean, let's face it, you know, the iPhone's basically responsible for the types of phones we look at right now. There's that very telling chart where they sort of show what cell phones looked like prior to the release of the iPhone, and then what they look like afterwards. And there's a very uniform look after the release of the iPhone. So, you know, if you get in the habit of releasing your old code, you know, out of the goodness of your heart, more companies can sort of go in and compete with you on that, which might be good for society, but isn't necessarily good for your company. Whereas a company like Apple, either, you know, it has that lead time on its competitors while they figure out how to do what Apple did, or at the very least, it limits the competition to other players that have been working with similar problems and, you know, have a reasonable chance at. I might want to pick up. I think I'll try and get the goodies.
No MCPD. Badges will get a bullet to brain. Rule 2, no court. You're just not welcome. Rule 3. My people keep the peace in the district and ensure
I might just go in guns blazing because this seems like a pretty tough group to do stealthy. Mind you, I am looking to use a few minutes of time. Alright, that's not quite what I planned, but I'll sneak and attack where I can and see how far I can get with a stealthy approach. Further than I thought. Yeah, well, that's not a surprise. I don't think I can tag that person from behind. Also, I feel like I'm losing frames again.
Hey, where you at?
Boring conversation anyway. The reason I didn't pick up any of the weapons is so that I have some mobility. I'm not sure. Come on. Again, not what I was trying to do. That might kill me, actually. Just trying to desperately recover my frame rate. Okay, I have a fighting chance now. Okay, 355s and a BD. Now we loot everything else. My preference is still sort of non-violent. I think for the most part, like, there are some fairly loathsome figures in Night City, but I generally, like, I don't know, for myself, I'm just a big old softy. But number two, I think there's just a general idea. There's definitely sort of shifting alliances in this game. Sometimes things are just business. So a decent example here, right, is you have that deal with the... You have that deal with the with Maelstrom. And under Royce, things don't go well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't work with Maelstrom, even if you don't necessarily like them. And like what, Kang Tao, Arasaka, there's plenty of people who, or Valentino's, Padre, is definitely a figure that gives you quite a bit of work. So it doesn't necessarily seem natural for you to just sort of decide, okay, I'm going to murder every single person who might be doing business with him too. Now that said, I'm also it's a violent game. I'm also not a complete softie on it, but character-wise, I do like the idea of not necessarily you go into, actually, what, the best analogy I can think of is gladiators. So it's not necessarily going in. Mad Dad, how are you doing? It's not necessarily going in with the intention of taking someone out. And gladiator fights in history, they weren't gentle, but everything wasn't always to the death. I mean, like, the gladiators are an investment, right? You don't want to. You do want to see some kind of a return on that investment. So yeah, similar idea here, where it's dangerous. They have guns. I have a gun. There's the potential that somebody will not survive the encounter, but I'm not going out of my way to specifically end a target's life. You came into a gladiator talk. It's the only time, or that was the only reference to gladiators that I had so far. Someone did tell me to watch. There's a so I've seen the Spartacus movie, but somebody told me to watch. There's like a Spartacus TV show, which I don't know. It's kind of like a softcore porn version of 300. It feels like. I remember watching John Hannah. Like, he always seemed to play mildly wholesome characters. But,
well, here we are. You and me, face to face.
Sure we're alone. Wouldn't want any unpleasant surprises.
No surprises. Except maybe you're already one of us. Don't trust a soul.
This spot. Didn't pick it at random, I guess.
Guessed right. Wanted to show you something. Means a lot to me. Could help put some things in perspective. And it means I trust you. Come over here.
So what's so special about this place?
Lived just 2 blocks off while I was here in NC on assignment. Locals come here after sunset. Fire up grills, crack open beers, talk about nothing in particular. I'd swing by here come evening sometimes. All of it. Every inch is special. Reminds me of Brooklyn. Actually from there.
Wouldn't mind hearing about it. Brooklyn.
Got this memory. It was the night before I raided a Militech data fort. I'm sitting out on my fire escape. Just lit a J. Down on the street, I see a party starting. There's playful screams and laughter. Someone's blasting funk from their stoop. I hear Willie, too. Sells the best Scott dogs around. He's shit-talking one of his chooms. And there's bonfire smoke in the air. Safe. Familiar.
Were they celebrating something?
Yeah. A Thursday.
Yearning to go back.
Can't rewind the clock, V. By the time you realize you missed something, it's usually too late.
Songbird, need you to be straight with me.
I helped Hansen spring the trap on Myers. Maya did the deal in exchange for the neural matrix. I downed the plane, deliver Myers, yes. But blast her out of the sky, then hunt her down? Wasn't what we agreed.
You betrayed her.
Not just her. Nothing went according to plan. What a fucking mess.
So what was your plan?
For you to rescue Myers while I secured the AI Matrix, and for us to run, all before Kurt caught on. Now Hansen's changed the terms of our deal. They'll make him answer for the attack. He knows that, so he's covering his ass. The one thing he doesn't know is what's on the Cynosure mainframe. He's hoping it's data he can use as leverage against the NUS. Says that's my ticket to freedom, but soon as he gets his hands on it, I'm dead. I just know it. It fucked everything up, I know, V. But I had no choice.
Still don't understand why. Wasn't any other way, honestly.
Wouldn't have resorted to this, if there was. For Myers, the NUSA, I'm just another weapon in their arsenal. Tool for reaching beyond the Black Wall. And weapons and tools, they don't get to make decisions or choose to retire.
Sounds painfully familiar. Think I know how you feel.
I doubt anyone understands this feeling as well as you do, V. You're the only one I could trust with this. Only question is, after everything you just heard, feel the same way about me?
I want to ask, actually, what happened exactly? You know, when you reached past the Black Wall.
Know the feeling when you try to remember the address of a place you lived half your life, but it just turns up blank?
Mean losing your memory?
A snowflake lands on my glove. I can calculate its unique fractal structure. But what did my mom's voice sound like? Sometimes I lose control. Or get the sense I'm surrendering to someone else. But it feels horrible.
Felt it too, with the Chimera. Like a living nightmare.
Yeah. More and more, I get the sense someone's standing behind me. But there's never anyone there.
Don't trust Reed? Guy wants to save your life.
Mm-hmm. He saved me once already. Word of a boss shit on Militech crossed his desk, so he knocked on a 19-year-old girl's door with an offer she couldn't refuse.
Join and serve or become a Netwatch trophy.
That girl died that day. The person in front of you is what was born from that death. Of course, Reed, He died too. Just more recently. 7 years ago. The NUS issued his death sentence, yet he serves the country to this day, clinging to something that's lost all meaning to me.
Why not just go home?
My home burned down when I was forced to trade warm Brooklyn brick for sterile Washington walls. I have nowhere to go back to.
Get the feeling this is the first time you've been honest with me.
Yeah, with you and myself. I need to get away. From Kurt, the NUSA, Reed, from everything.
Speaking of, out of everybody out there, you saw Hansen as a trusty ally. Seriously?
I needed someone who could tear me from Myers' grip. I knew him from my time in Night City when I was posted here.
Took a steep risk, all right. And a plain gonk one at that.
That's why I enlisted you too.
I wanted to save it for after this. I really like some of the writing in this.
Night City's just a pit stop along your escape route. That was always the plan, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's just... things got complicated. Messy. Certainly didn't expect my old agency chooms to get involved. Or to find myself caged by Kurt. I'm fleeing, V. Gotta get out. And to do that, I need you. 'Cause you know how it is.
Okay. Say I believe you. What's the next step?
We go through with the mission. Grab the neural matrix. While Reed and Alex grapple with Hansen, we make our getaway.
And then?
You help me skip town. I already cut a deal with the Black Clinic far, far from Night City. There, the Rippers can access the Matrix and use an algorithm to create a prototype of our cure. They'll need me present to run their tests. The moment they're finished, I'll send word. And that's it. Everything. Like a weight off my shoulders, honestly. Now I have to ask. You're in this because you understand me? Or because I promised to save your life?
Can't be both.
You'd fit right in DC. Just enough truth, but not too much. I'll take what I can get. I guess that's all. I suppose you should call Reed. Let him know all set for the meet with Hansen.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I already said I actually quite liked a lot of the writing there. I'm not gonna call Reed quite yet. I'm gonna try doing the. Always thought it was showbiz where you couldn't trust a soul. Turns out, in hindsight, met a few good eggs in my time. But man, all these cloaks from Langley, guaranteed dagger in the back, and probably stuck there by a friend. You're getting played here, no doubt about it. But not much choice with our survival on the table. Just do me a favor, ears perked, eyes peeled, and mind always, always razor fucking sharp. There's a couple things that I'm sorry, Olaf. I'm gonna have to save Spartacus chat for another time. Although I do appreciate your comment. That did give me a chuckle. While I try and get warmed up on this, how many people in chat have seen the adaptation of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy? And it can either be the older adaptation with Alec Guinness as George Smiley, or the more recent Hollywood motion picture with Gary Oldman in the same role. That's a lot more people than I thought there would be.
Sa pagadeiro. Mwen espere se nan tet pou sa ye. Mwen pedi tout sa mwen te reme. E pi...
Well, nuts.
À l'assaut! Baguette fait back!
It's definitely time for a contagion. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So the specific details I actually really liked in that sequence were some of the descriptions that they had. So like, one of the things I like the most in, I'll call them in general speculative fiction settings, right? So this applies as well to fantasy as it does science fiction.
Very eager to swap hands.
But when you're describing a world in which there are things that we can't experience yet, right? So there's the concept of the black wall, and it's been introduced as this big danger, and you also have this character that has a unique relationship with the black wall, let's say. Or if not unique, then at least, you know, has a rare talent. Okay, this might get a bit... I think...
One more thing. Hear that? Clock's a ticking. Time waits for no chew.
Okay, I might still be able to make it. In combat, I think there's a situation where these things will open fire on you, but we should be reasonably safe. But yeah, so, you know, we don't have a black wall in the, you know, in the real world. But I really like the description in terms of what it feels like to be behind the black wall. And like, there are definitely real life, I mean, essentially for the character to describe that to a person who, you know, is living in 2022, well, 2024 now, but yeah, like basically to have someone who, you know, is living in the modern day, you have to draw on that, but it also requires you as the writer to sort of think about, well, what exactly does it feel like? But also, you know, kind of the descriptions of Brooklyn and such I thought were kind of nice too. But what I particularly liked on that one was, you know, to a certain, I mean, like Reed's kind of already talked about Songbird's strengths and weaknesses, right? Very good tactical thinker, not so good on the strategy, and, you know, this is why the mission didn't turn out the way that it did. And she's actually, I think it's quite telling where she, you know, she seems to have a fairly good idea of her strengths and weaknesses, you know, and sort of with the benefit of seeing how things have turned out, is kind of aware where she's come up short and is not necessarily able to help deliver. And what's kind of neat is that I almost feel like this has been written specifically for people who are sort of know-it-alls after things have been realized. So, not to harp on the Embracer stuff, but it is what I've most recently talked about. I find a lot of people really like ripping on companies like Embracer, but what I do find interesting is that for all of the, you know, all of the condemnation of the companies and all of the discussion about how greedy the CEOs are and so on and so forth, I actually did not see a lot of commentary on the conditions of financing and whether or not they would last, right? And so one of the things that I've always wanted to be careful on in terms of any kinds of writing that I do on the business of video games is not to come down too hard on people running companies for not predicting the future. obviously you don't want to give people a complete pass because, you know, long-term strategy is the role of people in those leadership positions. Oh my god. The police element here is one of the most frustrating just because of the way it can completely wreck a run like this.
Oh, yeah, I knew I picked the right
Anyways,
word
that was
for
pretty
the game.
mild.
My man will take care of the rest. Little token of my appreciation's waiting for you in the drop locker.
But yeah, I think, not only do I think it's very natural, but I think it's also more likely to come up today than it might have been previously, right? Everybody just loves telling people what to do. Everybody loves to pretend that they knew better. And this always comes after the fact, right? It's you know, it's never at a time when people can actually change things. It's always after things go wrong. You know, they knew it all along, and if things go right, then they always knew that it was going to be successful, and it was obviously so easy. You know, they could have done it themselves, and of course, this is never actually true. So. I feel like that moment is perfectly, because like the answer that I give is more or less designed for people like that, and I really feel the thing that makes that work is, right, you get to be clever after the fact. You know, oh yeah, real gonk move there, bringing in Hansen. And she throws that right back at you. It's like, you know, that same judgment made me pick you as well. Which, again, it has, you know, it's nice as a defense, but it also sort of has that question mark too, right? You know, did I do the right thing picking you, especially if you're asking questions like that. So, I don't know. There's a few layers to that. I always kind of feel, I have to imagine that the scenes like that are definitely like the big ones. You know, you sit down, it's like, okay, you know, I really got to get this one down. We got to put this through a few different drafts or something. But it really delivered. Although I'll confess, this might just be my lack of creativity, but this idea that Songbird wants to get out, like there's a side of me where it's like, you know, she's the best at what she does, and she's got the, you know, she's got the resources of a nation behind her to allow her to do things she couldn't do somewhere else. Why wouldn't she want to stick there? And I know, of course, she says, you know, weapons don't get to decide what they do, but I'm like, but you have your purpose. I think maybe that's just one case where it rubs a little bit different from what I was kind of wanting to get out of this DLC, which was the spy story. I think, you know, the same reason I kind of like medias or the idea of doing a trauma team style campaign. You have a lot of characters that, I mean, like solos want their independence. Is why they're called solos. That's true for a lot of, it's true for a lot of characters. But obviously there are corporations and there are, you know, there are nations still, and they look very different from what they do nowadays, and so it's kind of interesting to see how they operate. So, I don't want to keep the Songbird caged, but it's the one part where I sort of have that distance from her. It's like, you're a top tier hacker. Why wouldn't you want to stay with the FIA? Although, obviously, I heard the same dialogue you did. Anyways, I think I got to call it there. I am looking forward to carrying on with the mission. I'm actually I was originally going to stop just before the Songbird sequence, but I'm actually really glad I did that. That was really interesting. So I'm not saying I'm going to ignore the carjackings and such, but I definitely kind of want to see how this all wraps up. The last thing I was just saying in terms of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, it's kind of neat just because of the how do I put it? You know, the extra layers and the relationships and the sort of, sometimes these plans playing out over extremely long periods of time. There's just a little bit of a hint of that in the various relationships between the characters and what's going on. It's a feature I like. Like I said, they've done a really good job of telling a pretty good spy story within like the 2077 world. And so on top of the fact that, you know, obviously there's just a big redemption arc that's been pushed for Cyberpunk as a result of this DLC anyway, but I actually just think the quality of the story is quite good. I'm really enjoying that. So I'm hoping enough people find this worthwhile to see it through at the end on stream. Obviously, like, I can continue playing it on my own, but I do appreciate you all hanging out, and I hope you all continue to watch. So, in terms of future plans, on Monday I've got a holiday, so my usual deal with Mondays my usual deal with holidays are that I will reserve the option to stream, but I don't feel obligated to do so. Essentially, I want the holiday to actually be a holiday, so there may not be Dead Space on Monday, but if I do stream on Monday, it will be Dead Space. I can leave it at that. Wednesday we'll do a Brace Yourself game. I feel like Godless is probably the best option for that. And for those of you who are just here for Cyberpunk, we will do that a week from now on Friday. Now I've got a few options in terms of who I can host, but I noticed that Lord Gloom is currently doing some art. So he's always been nice in terms of rating me, and I feel like I don't get as many opportunities to show some support there. So I will leave you in Lord Gloom's capable hands. Lord Gloom, in addition to doing the art stream that you will be watching, does play card games, both physical Magic the Gathering as well as the digital one. I've watched him play quite a bit of Escape from Tarkov, and I originally found him through Brace Yourself's Cobalt Core, which is a wonderful deck-building roguelike. So definitely a nice guy, definitely somebody worth watching, and a nice way to end our Friday evening. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, especially everyone, for the subs. That was very generous of all of you. I hope you feel you got your money's worth, and if not, I will do better next week. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.